All right, Scituate Board of Health meeting. You all set back there? Sweet, I knew you were. Scituate Town Hall, Selectmen's Hearing Room, Monday, November 24th, 2014, 7 p.m. Meeting opened. Look for a motion to accept the agenda.
Motion to open the meeting and accept the agenda?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Tobacco retail inspection and compliance check violation, Sands End Cafe and Marketplace. Marilyn Ward Howe.
Do you want me to just introduce what the background was?
Sure.
So the FDA conducts random compliance checks throughout the state, including Scituate and Hummerock, which are dealt with separately. They have done to date 15 compliance checks in our town. And then they issue for any kind of first-time violation, they'll issue a warning letter and ask the establishment to contact them to see what they can do differently. So Marilyn got one of these letters on behalf of Sands End, and then you had told me that you spoke with them.
I did.
So I'll let you tell us what they...
Pick it up from
Yeah,
there.
what they...
So I have the letter here, and it just said that on, let's see, on this date, let me find it, because I think it would be helpful if going forward there was some kind of change, whether we do it here in Scituate or if the FDA. So here's the notice, and there are boxes that they check. So it said on this date, July 24th at 12:18, our person came in, our minor came in, and the gender of the person that sold them, there was a box check, female, adult, and the hair color. And there are several, bald, on and on and on. And other characteristics as well. So they checked off that there was a female, adult, blonde person, my employee, who sold cigarettes to a minor. That may in fact be true, and I'm not disputing that, but whatever is decided going forward, it would have been really helpful to me as the owner of that establishment to have two things done. Number one, I would have liked whoever did this compliance check to have come in almost immediately after to say, we just did a compliance check and that employee sold cigarettes to a minor, because there was no one that matched this description that day on my books, because I went back.
How far after the fact did you get that?
A month.
August 21st.
So it was a month after. If in fact I had a rogue employee that was just not caring and selling, that person would have been able to continue to do that for a month. So this provided me with no information at all. It was misinformation, because again, there was no blonde, unless you might call me a blonde, and I think that would be a stretch, wouldn't you? Because there is a box here for gray and white hair. That's the one I checked for me, but, so I really didn't know. And it was like, geez, I don't know what to do with this information, because I have people that, my employees that return, many of them do, some are new, but I would have loved to have known who was that employee that did that.
Did you still have a meeting with all them?
I absolutely did.
So-
I still did what they asked me to do was, how are you going to address this? And so I said, every year, before the employees come on, because it's not a problem in the off season. In the off season, we're very slow. It's all repeat customers that we know all day long. The problem would exist in the summer. And not only would it be new people, but new employees. So that's where that 3-month period would be it. So every year when I'm bringing on new people, we go through this mandatory meeting about sales of alcohol and cigarettes to minors and what they must do. And after I got this notice, I did it again. And the other thing I did was, where previously I would say if somebody looks less than 30 years of age, just to make sure, because how it's supposed to be 27 years of age if they look that.
Can I just jump in for a second? You conduct sort of the teaching of people?
I do,
And do you document that?
I do. Yep,
I spoke to these 3 people that night, I gave them the rules and regulations, how, what you're just saying now, but you actually document that you actually.
what do you mean you spoke to those 3 people?
Whoa, whatever employees you're talking about.
Oh, I see, yes.
Do you document your
Every time that we have, every
Okay.
new time that I'm bringing in a host of people,
Yeah.
yes. If you would like me to do that and submit it or something, that, okay.
No, but if you needed, but if you were ever asked to
Sure,
produce
I would
it,
do
you
that.
could.
Yep,
Okay.
and I did it again. So after this happened, not only did I have yet another meeting, but now I have signs posted right above the cigarette area, selling area, that says, we ID everybody, everybody. So I don't care how old you look, if we've never seen you before, we're gonna ID you. And I submitted that to, what was it, the FDA? Is that who it was? Yeah.
I think going forward, I didn't even realize that the feds were doing this stuff. And we used to have a collaborative in Plymouth County that would go around and test places, like it or not like it. It was kind of like a sting operation. And it just kind of kept everybody honest, not to say anything different.
Fine.
This may come about again, and the town of Scituate does have regulations for fines and stuff like that. I don't see anything
But
here
let me just
tonight.
add-
But I just want to say that in the future, going forward, I hope it sticks with that plan. And we've been pretty good. The town of Scituate in a whole has been pretty good about it. I think we had 1 or 2 places that were a problem. Beyond that, the town of Scituate, I felt, was excellent in past history. I'm going to leave those 2 places nameless. I don't think it's worth bringing up. So just going forward, Marilyn, I just,
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, I've never had a problem before, and the kids are pretty good.
No, your restaurant's fine, very
Yeah.
little stuff
So I
and
was surprised.
cigarettes and...
Again, it would have been so helpful if they had provided more information,
Well, and
because,
I'll add that collaborative, when the minor got back to the guy's car, he put it in a baggie, and he marched right back into the store.
Yeah.
and-
That's what I'd love
and
to
did-
see.
And did say, you just sold it to this person, didn't ask him for an ID, he's a minor.
Yeah.
They did that.
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
and he come in here with the evidence and
Oh,
lay it
yeah.
out. It was-
That's what you need. I mean,
With the receipt
I'm like
and
a
the-
month
yeah.
later,
Yeah, so-
and all I have to verify that they really went to was a picture of my restaurant. And it's like, what? You know, you really
We
were
understand
here?
there's slip-ups, there's understand, in past times, usually the first time is kind of what we're doing right now, and then the
Yeah.
second time, it's in with like a 2-year period, the fines develop, and one of the places got shut down for a week, I think it was over a school vacation, and fined $100, and that's not what we're here to do, we don't want to do that.
Right.
So,
Right. Well, again, I would
The
hope this
authority
would
is
never
there.
happen at my place. Again, I was really surprised, because the kids that work there are really good kids, and, you know, we have them schooled to, please, number one, if you're underage yourself, you can't sell them. You need to come to somebody like me, an older person. But certainly, even if you are of age and you've not seen this person and they are on the cusp of do they look it or not, you know, let's err on asking for their ID. So I was truly surprised that I got this letter a month after supposedly the infraction happened.
I'm going to shift gears just because you're here. Do you guys have any other questions or anything? Is there any
No.
other? I got to ask, since we implemented the new cigarette tobacco regulations, have you had any response, positive, negative? Just sidebar, this has nothing to do, if you don't want to answer it,
Right,
Marilyn,
no,
you don't
I'll
have to.
answer.
I hate to put you on the spot, but it's just curious.
You know, more than not, it's, do you really have, does Scituate have the right to do that? They thought it was a state/federal, and can it really be town by town? More than that, that's what I've heard. I don't think they have the authority to do that. And I just said, I don't know.
I have to do what I have to do.
I'm abiding by what I know as of May 1st. If you want to challenge it, go through the appropriate channels. I don't even know what they would be, but this is the law, and of course, we have this unusual circumstance in Hummerock that you can literally walk over the bridge and now be in Marshfield and buy those cigarettes, you know. So that it was a hotbed issue to some extent. It wasn't a huge issue for me at all.
But no negligible sales loss or anything that you would have noticed?
No,
that would have
no.
affected your bottom line or anything?
It did
Well, we
not.
thanked you before when you
Yeah.
came in and mentioned some stuff
Yeah. No, it really didn't.
Yeah,
So, then,
sad, I was just curious, so.
I'm hearing more and more communities are going to 21.
Yes.
So I would imagine you knew what the law was when you changed it. So I forgot the new community I'm hearing is going, and then there was that thing in the
Well,
news
that was
where,
Westminster that they wanted to,
Yeah, that was-
You can't quite.
that's another one, but there is another community, correct, that's going to 21?
There's a few of them now.
A few of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hingham either went to 19 or 20, or maybe on their way to 21.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe Marshfield will, and it'll level the playing field.
That-
And you have that circumstance, whether you could be living on the border of a state.
Yes,
as well,
yeah,
And where state laws are different, 10 feet over the border.
Yep.
New Hampshire Classic.
I have no objection to that.
For many years.
Yeah, for many years, yeah.
My only thing would be whomever is doing these stings, if you do them going forward, and I've lived in West Springfield where they did them on a regular basis, I think you need to come in to the proprietor within the half hour and say, we were just here, that employee did this, or whatever, because this was really like,
Yeah, a month later, I
You as
don't,
the store owner, there must be some sort of feedback way to get back to you.
Well, I told
email
them.
Or anything. Oh, you did?
when I wrote, because they asked me to write a letter within so many days, and I said, there was nobody on my books that day that matched your description. Why didn't somebody come to me?
Have you had a response since?
Yeah,
No.
what is that?
No.
No, the only
They tell me
response,
that To the owner or the manager, I agree, Marilyn, yeah, without a question.
Yep.
Yeah.
the only response was because it was your first infraction, we're not fining you. But they
Yeah, but how do they
totally
know that?
ignored,
Oh, based on their.
Yeah, based on
Their
their compliance checks. So the FDA runs their program separate from anything that any town in the state does. So our first knowledge that this was happening was when I got a form from the Massachusetts Health Officers Association saying, FYI, the FDA has been doing compliance checks, and oh, by the way, this establishment, had a warning letter issued to it. And so I had to go online to find out what the letter was and then, reach out to you to find the specifics.
Mhm.
So we were, as a group, kind of unaware that the FDA was doing this on their own through their own programs. But I can certainly provide feedback through MHOA, based on this meeting, that you as a store owner would like the immediate feedback so that you can implement things in a more
absolutely,
reasonable timeframe.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Too, it's better for the town, if that's, you're in violation, and
Yeah.
take care of it right away. Well, thank you very much for coming in.
You're very
Do you
welcome.
have any questions of our board or anything?
I don't. I want you all to have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
It's hard to believe it's here. And, I guess I do. So you think you will be implementing some stings, for lack of a better term?
I was a big fan of the collaborative. I would love to, I thought about starting, well, I was a big fan of the collaborative, and it was an offshoot of the tobacco big settlement, that we issued. Well,
It is.
money was left that the lawyers didn't get, there was still another $1 billion left, and, they did programs like that, and then mysteriously the money dried up,
A
so.
lot of tax money in that pack of cigarettes you sell, and some of that money should be
Yes.
going to this stuff. We're looking at working with some towns locally to group together. Just-
Do it for the coming year.
Just to let people know that, like I say, 99% of the businesses are right on target. You just want to make sure that everybody's playing by the rules.
And then I think the only other thing would be, when, out in West Springfield, when I had my other business, it was questionable as to whether you would send a young person in without any ID, and just enough to buy a pack of cigarettes, we'll say, or a young person in with an altered ID. I think that altered ID is really very difficult, because some of these IDs can be so professional looking. If you're going to sting an operation, my input would be, that operation would truly be in violation if they never asked for an ID and they only had the money to buy a pack of cigarettes and you never went further. But if we're gonna start trying to trick the proprietors by having these really good IDs, that's unfair. So that would be my only input on that.
The collaborative did not, the minor did not have an ID.
Okay.
I know the ones, yeah, they wouldn't have nothing.
They would have
literally
nothing.
take everything out of their
Just enough
pockets.
for the pack of cigarettes.
The officer would say, here's a $10 bill, serial number, literally, and this is what they went in
Yeah,
with. There was
that's
nothing else in
fair.
their pockets, keys, nothing, gum, nothing. This is what they had.
That's right.
You'd run
And
in.
they'd be waiting outside for them
Yeah.
when they came out,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so that way there was, if they came out with anything, they only had a $10 bill when they went in, and they came out with a.
Pack of
actually,
cigarettes and a
probably
buck.
pots now.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you get
And
a
now
pack of
that's not
cigarettes for
even
$10?
enough.
Yeah.
That's not even enough.
I didn't change.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
in.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Have a good
nice
evening and a
holiday.
happy holiday.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along, public hearing, development and implementation of private well regulations.
Jen has been busy.
I see you gave us a little handout, and the first thing,
I did.
unless you have an order, I'll let you
Nope,
take
nope.
it. I was just gonna say, I see the application for permit to install a private well.
Yeah, so my understanding from the last meeting was that we wanted to, at least in the interim, get something out there such that we could learn who was installing wells, where these wells were, so that we could, begin to develop a database and a record. So, we developed based on looking at the same towns in which I've been developing the regulations from, created an application form, which is very similar to a septic permit.
Mhm.
Series of forms, and then a checklist for things that the applicant would need to provide in order for us to sign off on a permit.
It looks pretty thorough. Is there a difference between the registration number and the state license number? Under well drilling?
No,
No.
they should be the same. That's why I need fresh eyes. So yeah, it's a registration number.
And on the second page, upon completion, an as-built plan and completion report must be submitted to the Board of Health by the well driller. I would put that in bold or maybe star it. I mean, I think that's a major,
What, that last sentence there?
Last sentence.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's an important piece, that's a final important piece. That should be somehow highlighted under,
Okay.
And an application. So this, we're not gonna talk about a plan and locating other, oh, yes, you have it right here.
Yeah, it's on the checklist.
Okay, no, I actually like this a lot.
So this is something we're looking at, we can put it into power and give us a little bit of time to work on the other regulations, but as we agreed that,
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question. So, it, sort of like the septic system, are you going to have 30 days the same way? Or they're not gonna be able to walk out with it? Because you
Correct.
need to review the plans.
Correct.
is
So
that
built
30
in.
day?
Yeah, so built into the regulations, buried in here, there is a time frame in which we have to review, and I think it's 15 business days,
So
using
15
another
business
town as an
days.
example.
Okay. And instead of having this fee line here, do we just want to vote on a fee number? So there's no question, instead of having that line there, it's just gonna be X amount of dollars, the top page, the top line on the first page?
Um,
I'm gonna ask, yeah, I see it top right, yeah.
So.
Some of the other towns have a,
So the towns vary between $50 and $200. Most of the towns have a flat fee, regardless of the type of well you put in. There are one or two towns that have one fee for an irrigation well and one fee for a private potable well. So I had recommended kind of going in the middle. The review process is the same, all the paperwork is the same, so I was kind of thinking a flat fee, and then, $150, which is the same as our septic fee. So that was
And
what I.
looking at a
wrote
septic
out
fee
there.
with the review would be about the same amount of time, and it would be the same amount of time for filing and everything else, so 150 would be in line with that to, again, not to cover costs,
Right,
not for profit,
right.
cover costs.
Oh, yeah.
And 150 makes it, I mean, it's not a, if somebody's got, they'll be serious about it if they put the non-refundable 150.
Right.
They won't just come in with plans on a napkin, they'll come in with something. After spending $150, they'll come in with something.
And maybe you should.
And and the cost to the, have the
Yeah.
engineer draw up the plans, they have to be serious in order to investigate the process.
Maybe you should put non-refundable right here too, as opposed to on the second page.
Yeah.
Should be right in front of the denomination.
Yeah, that's a good idea, that way we're not burying it in the thing, and no one can say, I didn't see that.
Right.
I mean, you should read the document anyways, but
Right.
I like that, that gives a little more transparency.
And then the other kind of key piece, which I found from a couple of towns, was that we would request both conservation and DPW to review it as well, to make sure that everybody's concerns would be addressed in terms of placement for conservation and water usage for DPW.
Okay, so if that's the case, the 15 days is gonna be enough. 15 business days is gonna be enough.
Pat typically looks at our septic plans pretty quickly.
Okay.
He's looking for wetlands, so I
Yeah,
believe that
right.
it would be the same
Open
purpose.
it, close it.
Right.
Yeah, so he'd have a quick thing to say, it's too close to wetlands, we might need a hearing on this.
Exactly.
Request for determination, or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, and DPW might be the same way, so.
And they would probably look at the water usage in the area, what else is around it, is this gonna be the first well or the 10th well?
I think
on
you
the
said it
stream?
earlier, nice to have another set of eyes on it.
Yeah.
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 Any other, you guys have any comment? Anybody in the audience? I know you folks just came in, I don't know if you were here for the well regulations or not. If you had any comment? No, okay.
I do have a question. So, right underneath your Scituate health certificate of compliance, this is to certify that the drinking water well,
Oops.
so that's a.
Private.
Private.
Private. I caught it down below in the permit, but not the certificate.
I think it's pretty thorough.
Yeah, so whether it's an irrigation or potable, it's gonna have to go through getting tested.
Right, right. And typically, from what I've seen, the irrigation wells are tested for fecal coliform and total coliform, whereas potable wells are tested for
Everything.
the gamut of,
Yeah.
And that
metals,
makes great
pesticides,
sense.
VOCs, et cetera.
Right.
Tapped into something, we didn't wanna be spreading it over the neighborhood.
Right, and that's actually kind of a critical piece in terms of the checklist. Most of the towns request 200 feet for most of the above-ground and below-ground structures, and several of the towns request either 200 or 400 feet for sources of contamination. However, based on my experience with the Massachusetts contingency plan, 500 feet radius around a well becomes a GW1 area, so it's a protected drinking water area. So that's why I figured we should expand the distance for searching for contaminated sites to 500 feet. And if there's anything present, then it becomes, the onus of the engineer to tell us whether they're up gradient sources or down gradient sources.
So you're expecting, just that 21E search, that contaminated database that they have?
So the 21E site provides listed sites that have had spills. So that's one way to search. But in the regulations that we have drafted so far, there's a whole list of items to look for. Landfills, dry cleaners, anything that can be gas stations, anything that can be a source of contamination, whether it's listed or not listed. Because not everything gets, identified and
Well,
sent to
Nick-
DEP.
Yeah.
So if we can say, okay, there's a golf course 250 feet away, and they apply pesticides to the lawn to make sure that the greens are nice, they may not have a release, on, with DEP, but in fact, they land apply pesticides and it could leach into the groundwater, and therefore, we would want to know if this particular well, following testing for pesticides, has anything detectable above limits. So I think it's a combination of just looking at a land search, what's around you, as well as looking at the 21E list.
And what will we do for existing situations?
So we have a little thing in here that says, for private wells existing prior to the implementation, we request that you register your well within 6 months, just so that we know where it is.
No fee.
Nope, no fee.
Right.
No fee. Just so we know where it is, so that in instances where, we're having septic systems put in, we can do a search.
Your well
and-
is on record.
Exactly.
That's right, to protect
exactly,
your
protect
well.
the well.
Yeah, and if, say, there was a spill or something, then,
You want to know about it.
Right.
yeah, the homeowner would want to know about it if they were in Florida, hey,
Exactly, they
what a truck
have it
tipped
well
over.
tested right away.
Yeah, something, yeah. Yeah, it kind of makes sense.
So we are voting on this permit, correct?
This piece.
Yeah, we can, because it's been publicly, yeah, we've stayed with it, so I'll accept the motion.
Make a motion to implement the Situate Board of Health application for a permit to install a private well, 2-page application, with the changes that we'll make.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So we'll make these tomorrow, and then we'll post to the website, and then we'll start letting the septic installers know, just to give them a heads up, since they seem to have a pretty good network, and get it out there by word of mouth as well as getting it on our website.
Right.
And they'll be in anyways within the next month to renew their licenses, so
Right.
you'll be seeing all of them.
Yeah, and we can draft a letter too to, have in the office, and, as we get contacts, we can, either pass it out or send it to, because obviously we don't have a list of licensed well drillers, that work in Scituate currently, because it hasn't been on our radar yet. So once we develop that list, we'll be able to make sure that they're aware
Yeah.
of our specific regulations.
Good job, thank you
Yeah,
very much.
great job.
Sure.
Good job. Well, good work.
So that's the first piece. The second piece is, so since we were last here, I've incorporated Marshfield, Norwell, Plymouth, Nantucket, Orleans, and Neshoba into what I had existing. And the two pieces that I was looking for feedback on specifically are construction and water quality testing.
Point us in that direction,
I want to say it's,
please.
well, right now it's just a placeholder as number 8 and 9. Sorry, I don't have page numbers on these yet. So 8 is on the bottom of the page.
We got a construction and water quality.
So the numbers will change around, but right now I have 8 as a placeholder for well construction and 9 as a placeholder for water sampling procedures and water quality requirements. And obviously, the water quality differs, for irrigation versus potable wells. But in terms of construction, there is a huge range of guidelines provided by towns. And I believe we had discussed, very early on in my tenure starting to work on this, that we didn't want to necessarily get into the engineering. Towns like Hingham and Cohasset very specifically spell out well casing requirements and grout requirements and certain things that the well driller, as registered in the state, should know how to do, and they should follow the Massachusetts guidelines. So there's a range of, Hingham and other towns going through all of the nitty-gritty specifics. Also, well volumes, how much water is the well putting out per minute, per hour, etc. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there are a couple of towns that say, well drillers should follow Massachusetts well installation guidelines from 2008, EPA guidelines, and any other applicable regulation or law, period. And I've kind of I started with my base being Hingham, which is very, very detailed, and started to kind of back off that based on our conversation. So what you'll see in the well construction right now are pieces from towns that do not necessarily follow the engineering piece, but are, for example, wells must be constructed to maintain existing natural protection. One I really like, which I think is great, is a metal tag shall be affixed to the top of the well casing at the time of installation so that it can be located by a metal detector. So if a property owner moves and the new property owner doesn't want to use a well, eventually they'll need to properly abandon it. Because there are too many wells in the state that are truly abandoned in the truest sense of the word, where they are abandoned, they collapse in time, and they create voids in earth and kids fall down them. So I think that's a great little added comment on well construction that doesn't get into the engineering but is an important piece for the future. So I've kind of started to just put those things in and take out the engineering related items.
That's a good idea. I do like 8.3 and 8.4, they're good. The metal tag is good. 8.3 is good because you never know, that one might be close to the water and then you have a giant storm and you never know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? So, but, it's when you assume you know what happens, but you would
Right.
assume that some of these guys, that most of these guys would know what they're doing.
Well, that's what, you're covering that by 8.1.
Right.
Right.
Right. That could be accounting principles, that could be building code, that's kind of
Right,
using currently accepted practices.
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
No, I think you went down the right road.
Yeah, so,
Okay, so I'll kind of, following that vein, I'll go back and start to pull in other things comparable to this that I think we would want to consider under the construction piece. And similarly with the water sampling, different towns have different requirements for what gets analyzed, which I thought was kind of interesting. Some say, metals are only required in certain instances, that it's more bacteria, coliform, total coliform. And they say, the town reserves the right to request additional analyses, particularly if it's your drinking water well.
How much is it typically to get a well?
It's relatively cheap. A metals analysis.
What's relatively cheap, $100?
A metals analysis.
$300?
RCRA 8 metals and MCP 14 metals are less than $150.
But whatever, the
Sample.
whole panel.
Pesticides is more expensive typically. So, in some towns, I think that's why if you have a golf course, you would flag pesticides for sure. If you had an orchard, you would flag
Right.
pesticides and metals.
And if you're near a farm, you would do bacteria or something like that.
Yeah, I think you have to do bacteria regardless,
Keep
because it
all
wouldn't
out.
go through treatment. And that would be something that you could treat.
Just trying to pin it down where we're doing the right thing on a home sale, that the wells are tested, but without going overboard and
Right, like do you...
causing a financial burden for somebody.
Right, like do you request, and I can reach out to the labs that I've worked with in the past and say, okay, what is your typical 8260 VOC panel, which is, runs the gamut? Or, do you want to only have, the VPH and EPH, which is gasoline components and PAHs? So you can narrow it down from, 100 chemicals amongst VOCs to 20. Depending on what you're looking for.
So from all these other towns that you've looked at, they run the gamut for portable drinking wells, meaning that some are stricter than others or what they're testing for? That surprises me.
I mean, uniformly, they say you have to meet, MCLs or...
As opposed to,
Septic.
what do the state guidelines say?
I actually haven't looked to see what the state guidelines specifically say for testing. They get into the construction. Let's see, they are back here somewhere. State Here we go. Water quality and water testing, 61.
And another question too, while you're looking that up, is how long does the test good for? Is it good for a week, 2 weeks, a year?
Well, it depends how quickly the well is used and what the sources of potential contamination are. Is it a continuing source, or is it, a one-time
I'm just kind of thinking,
release?
if the board does decide that a well should be tested at the time of a sale,
Mhm.
I got to look at it from a real estate point of view, real estate broker point of view. Your potential seller, you say, yeah, get the well tested, and then we have one thing out of the way. It's like a Title V, you know what I mean? It's good for 6 months. So then you have that. So somebody that comes in and says, how's the well? Well, it's good, we have the test here. But if it's only good for a week, then you would wait until, the purchase and sale agreement was going forward and you were ready to close, then you'd have the well tested, and that could throw up the red flag too.
I think sources of contamination are going to be pretty stable. So if you see pesticides in a well, it's because you're near a pesticide release. If you see metals in a well, those metals are going to be pretty stable. They're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
The things that are going to move are the VOCs. So if you see MTBE in a well,
That's from-
that travel,
That would be from Reno.
it's a former gasoline additive, and it travels extremely well in groundwater. That's why it's no longer added, because there's so much groundwater contamination with MTBE in the state of Massachusetts, and actually the state of California banned its use long before anyone else. So you can see MTBE 2 miles from a site. That's why the state has an acceptable, that's why a state has an acceptable level of it in your well. So, so VOCs are gonna move.
Yeah.
VOCs are gonna move.
But back to your overall thing,
Yeah.
I think we have to, we care about it getting tested, but we don't care about it during the transfer.
I think we had discussed it one time,
I mean,
that a transfer, some sort of thing, to educate the new homeowner that they actually have a well.
Yeah, but that's their due diligence. I don't think we need to be getting involved. I mean, if it needs to be a yearly test, what happens during that year? I mean,
Well, if it was a yearly test, no, I wouldn't be concerned, but if it's something that only needs to be tested once every 10 years,
The state.
it's kind of like doing a Title V inspection on your
The
septic.
state guideline is every 10
You could have a
years.
5-year-old system and still have to be
Sure.
inspected.
What is the state launch package?
Yeah.
What the state requirement?
State requirements every 10 years, recommended.
Yeah, looking for it.
Recommended, but it's up to the
Right. It's
local
not
board of
enforced.
health.
Are we
to
gonna-
implement something
Are we
like
gonna
that.
break this down between potable and irrigation?
Most of it, there's no difference in terms of well construction, application, where am I? Where it differs is water quality testing, and most towns recommend that you test annually, but don't require it. Which is, what you were saying. In terms of the things that differ, the only thing that differs is some of the prohibitions, as well as the water quality testing.
Crossword puzzle.
It's just a chart of all the
I know, it does look
different,
like a crossword
all the
puzzle.
different places they could have contaminants in the water.
Yeah, like irrigation well, that would be the quick test if we were to do that, to say, that's what it is, just.
You
yeah,
don't want,
due
you don't want to be
diligence,
land,
but
you don't want to be land applying, anything with fecal coliform. You got kids that are running around on the property and,
That's right.
playing in
That's
the
right. Is it a
dirt.
good idea at the sale of a house, the potable well? Is it good to have it tested so the future person knows what they're getting? I don't know. Is it due diligence? How many houses do we have with the wells? Is it gonna really be a big deal, or are we overreacting or underreacting?
Well, there is, so section 10, who is this from? This is from Hingham, if I look at the blue right. Yeah, so Hingham had a section on, real estate transfers.
The seller shall provide a copy of the private well location and test results to the Board of Health within 30 days after the inspection has been completed.
And
to
most,
the buyer prior to closing, but in no case less than 24 hours prior to closing.
yeah, so
That's straight from
Hingham
the-
is very specific, both in all of their regulations, all aspects. They're very specific and very detailed.
I'm not surprised.
Well, that's because they also have a lot of areas that aren't, they have a lot of wells, don't they?
I'm learning that we do too.
Well, that's,
You know, as folks come in and talk to me about other things, they mention private wells. So we certainly have more than I thought we did. So it's something to think about. I mean, I can draft up because I've stayed away from the well construction piece and the water quality piece. I've kind of ignored it for now and tried to get the rest of the bones in place.
Okay,
So
well,
I can
something
see
we can
how
continue.
different.
Well, water quality is definitely important, obviously. You
Right.
know, well construction, the way that you've diverted them to the state regulations is pretty good. And then taking a couple
Yes.
pieces, then taking a couple pieces is pretty good.
The construction, the way it's been diverted to the state.
Yes.
Except for the few bullets that you put in there.
that's fine.
I agree too, because I don't think we're not engineers, we don't need to rewrite what the state's done, and that's,
And then
And
it
the
would be
well
on us to
inspectors-
inspect, then it'd be on us to inspect, and we're not qualified to do that.
That too.
Right.
You're right, right.
we have to have trust in the people that are licensed. And you should be, they're licensed for a reason, the state does that, so.
So then what I'll do is, I will, then, and please feel free to comment on this version, but like I started to do with the last one, I'll revise this to take out some of the engineering details, some of the definitions that come with those engineering details, and then I'll have, maybe what I'll do is I'll kind of put a comparison chart together of what the towns do for chemical testing, what specifically they require compared to what the state has standards for, drinking water standards.
I think going with the state again would be,
Well,
unless there's really a site that we're worried about. Yeah.
Well, you don't know until you see the plans.
Until you,
Right,
right, until you see
right.
the plan.
And that's why the
Testing,
question.
you never know what someone else did. I mean, it's an old
Right,
New
and-
England town, who knows?
Right.
Who knows property history, I mean, that's,
And that's why, the big question is, what do we ask people to sample for? Because what's there now certainly wasn't there 75 years ago. Was there a farm and, I don't know, was there some sort of
Silversmith or
crazy release,
something, yeah.
we have got landfills on the North Shore where, there were orchards nearby. So there's arsenic contamination. You wouldn't know it from today's uses, but, it's the historical use. So are we being protected by not asking for certain things, but are we being overbearing by asking for everything?
right.
And did we have it here? I know, I just looked at it, it was recommended every 10 years, or per your local board of health. Did you find as opposed, so,
Most towns recommend the same word that you use from the state. They recommend annual testing, but that the Board of Health don't require,
right,
reports.
right.
That's why I like it at the,
I kind of like it at the property transfer.
right, it's like a
Because
Title
at
V.
least it's something.
It's something that's looked at, the new owner is
Aware of it.
caveat emptor, either the well is good, bad, or indifferent, and
They're aware of it.
they're aware of it, yes. Yeah. Yeah, now it's up to them whether if they live there for the next 40 years, if they don't have it tested, it's been recommended you should. It's the same with pumping out a septic system. It's recommended every 2 to 3 years, depending on use. How many people do that? But it's good, It's good maintenance.
The other thing, so in the packet too, just to draw your attention to the application and the location sections. So section 5.0 is private well location, which is probably the easiest way to kind of look at a comparison. So 5.7 gives setbacks, essentially. And in my version, it's hard for you guys to see, but in my version, I have them color-coded to see which towns are in line with each other and which ones kind of stick out, if at all. So the property line setback, for the 6 towns that I found that spell it out are 10 feet. One has 25 feet and one has 50 feet. Can we get 50 feet from a property line in all locations? Probably not. So, do we follow Title V and say 10 feet? So I was gonna kind of go with the majority or what I thought made sense, but I wanted to throw out to all of you that there were some differences in a few areas.
I'd have to say, I think Scituate is pretty well developed. I don't know if we're doing this to protect land, but I think the Title V would be suitable for this town. And we probably have existing wells that, if we made it further than what Title V says, we may make them non-compliance, which they'd still get a variance for, but why
Why?
force the burden?
Yep.
I mean, that's just my own opinion. Quickly, with what you said and not really studying it, you know, just, again, revert back to what the state has said and keep it that way. I don't know if you guys have an opinion or not, but.
No, that sounds good.
You know,
One way to,
our, those first four, 3 or 4, actually A through G, the important ones, I mean, property line, public way, the leaching facility, and then the septic tank. Most importantly, the leaching facility.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting, one town, well, it was in the Neshoba region, they actually spell out I through K, which I thought was an interesting addition. They specifically call out cesspool, and Scituate still has a number of operational cesspools, so I thought that might be an interesting one to throw in the mix. It's consistent with a leaching, distance to leaching field, so I don't think it would be that onerous to add in a separate cesspool setback. But they were the only ones I saw that had done that.
So it's 100, but it would be 100 anyways to a cesspool, so you can almost say subsurface sewage disposal system would cover all of them.
what about 5.5, 60,000 square feet?
I only saw that in one town. I haven't taken it out, and I haven't found that more than one town even puts a size requirement on it. So that was one of the ones that I left in there, but I was kind of liking it less and less. And
Yeah,
I don't think you need it, yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't think
It almost makes this become zoning.
Yes,
you don't, yeah.
I mean, because if you can meet those setbacks, it's relevant.
A lot.
Because you're also now condemning, half the town can't do a well because they don't have 60,000 square feet.
I agree.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. It becomes zoning, I think, one way to put it. Fire.
I'm sorry, 5.3, Jen. Wells must be properly curbed and covered to prevent entrance or contamination and divert surface drainage away from the well. Should that bullet be under the construction?
Construction.
Yeah.
I think it already is under construction, isn't it?
And it may
In
be.
similar language?
Yeah, no, it may be.
Yeah.
But, pulling from different
Right.
regs puts things in different places. So once I remove things that we don't like or know the limitations, I'll be able to kind of read through it
Okay.
and see if it makes sense placement-wise. Because I know within section things are out of order too, in terms of timelines.
Yep.
And Michael, speaking to, separating out potable versus non-potable section, it's one of the couple of section 4.0. It's use of a well as a potable supply, and there's, very specific bullets only to a potable well. And I know 4.1 was something that you guys were focused on, in terms of if a property can be served by public, can a potable well be installed? So something to think about, as we work towards finalizing these, what kind of limits we want to place.
Yeah, I'd like to see if anybody from the water department has any input.
I let the DPW director know that we were working on these, and that, you know, I'd be showing them to him for his input as well, but I can certainly forward them specifically to the water department as well as the director.
I would,
Well, yeah, I think we'll forward them to the other boards as well, just for a quick comment, you know, just to keep the doors of communication open, conservation, zoning, and whatever, and if they choose to respond, then they do. If they don't, then so mote it be, we put our best foot forward.
yep.
So like I said, I'll make another round of revisions and show you what's different and just give me feedback, and I'll add in the water quality piece, and I'll take out, this will get much shorter with taking out a lot of the engineering stuff at the back end that I had held as a placeholder in case you wanted to go that route.
Nice.
So,
Cool.
I like it. I like the progress. Thank you very much. I can tell you've been working on this diligently.
right.
It is acknowledged. Thank
So.
you. You guys good? Any other questions? on that?
No, I'm good for now.
Tonight?
I'll read it again at some
Okay.
point.
So this aside.
Um,
And then,
New business.
oh, yes, new business. Just kind of an update on the flu clinics. Our public health nurse, conducted a flu clinic at the Scituate Pharmacy, gave out, 28 additional doses, 2 Saturdays ago. So our, flu vaccine supply is, getting very low. We have about 20 doses left, but anybody can still come into the office and get a flu shot if they need it, free charge.
How are we on track from like last year? We did a lot more flu? Did a lot
So,
more flu shots this year? Do we need to get more? Should we be prepared to get more, or are we?
so Eileen has contacted the state to see if in fact we can get more flu shots, and
Mhm.
if that's a possibility, she may consider doing a Saturday flu clinic
Mhm.
at her location to try to capture a different audience. She hasn't heard back from them, she just contacted them last week. But we are on target to be consistent with last year's
Good.
clinics.
Good, good.
That's all I had for updates.
There you go. Any old business?
No, I think this was the old business.
That's the old business.
That's the old business.
All right. Any invoices? Anything? You have invoices. We can sign invoices.
I'm 10 more.
Most important, Jen.
So she can go
One
to
for
her.
me.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a, speaking of new business, so I learned today that there's a seminar being put on by the Massachusetts Environmental Health Officers Association next Wednesday, and it's an update on upcoming regulations. So I think there's going to be a piece on lead and asbestos. I think there's going to be a piece on tobacco. So we'll kind of learn what's coming down the pike from the state level. So that's one of the invoices that you're being requested to sign, is to send me to that meeting.
All right. Knowledge is power.
I hope so. These.
And you folks are sitting here. You're not sitting here, I'm sure, to watch all this stuff. I
Oh, it's interesting.
With,
But no,
with new business, is there something you want to bring before the board?
yes, we have business before the board.
Oh, okay.
Just wanted to have a chat with you.
All right. Yeah, we're just signing stuff. Come on up, introduce yourself, and name and address for the record. And now, because you guys are walking in and it's new business, this is kind of informative to us, whatever it is, I don't know, but
Yep.
no decision made tonight because it's not a public
No,
hearing
that's
with
fine.
you guys. It's just,
Understood.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, so.
Okay, my name is Kristen Lilly. I live at 151 Border Street, Scituate,
Mhm.
and this is my husband, Michael Kenny.
Hey, Dan.
Good, good.
And our issue before the Board of Health is that we are seeking your assistance in a certificate of compliance that has not been signed by one of your licensed installers. And at this moment, I have a signed PNS and a closing that would be coming up for the property in question. We had an approved plan and permit to do an upgrade on the system where we had a 4-bedroom and we upgraded it to a 5-bedroom. This was back in 2013. So November started the work. It was completed in December, and we had the as-built done in November of 2013, and it was inspected, reviewed, and then the as-built prepared by Ed Stone, who is a licensed engineer surveyor. The work was completed as specifications in the plan approved by the town of Scituate. So it was backfilled and then tarred in reliance on the fact that the as-built was done, inspections were made, the work was completed. All bills were paid, so the installer had been completely paid for the job. And we were waiting to get the certificate of compliance signed by the installer. It's been 11 months.
Yeah.
All the paperwork is in. There wasn't a big pressure because we hadn't had an offer, so it wasn't as if we were in stress about the certificate of compliance. Situation arose recently where I have a dispute that is 100% unrelated to the project at 147 Border Street, but with the installer, as I said, with a completely different, unrelated, and it is being handled in a forum which is appropriate for...
Same contractor.
No.
Yes.
Completely different contract.
I'm sorry, did you say contractor?
Same installer, same...
Yeah,
Same
same
installer,
installer.
but completely separate contract,
Some different
permit,
project, different
everything.
project.
And so as a means of persuading me to to change my mind on things, he's withholding signing this certificate of compliance, because as I said, everything's been... And Jen contacted him and asked him to come down and sign it. So here I am with a dilemma, because I find it incredibly unjust and not the right thing to do to be forced and coerced to change a legitimate position that I have that's being pursued in the correct channels, because I have a house for sale and that person, that installer, is using his licensed position to influence me in this matter. And I have to have the certificate of compliance in order to sell my property. And as I said, everything has been met in the criteria for this
Except for the
permit.
signature.
Except a signature. It's
And
been
Jen-
completed, paid, and everything. So.
Kristen came down to see Jen to say, what's going on, and she contacted the installer while Kristen was present, and he said non-payment. I'm a builder, I develop property primarily up in Concord, Carlisle. Having been down this road before, Kristen was fully armed with submitted bills and checks evidencing payment in full. So it's just...
So we need a resolution, and you are the authority, you are the Board of Health, you issue licenses, you have the power to sign a certificate of compliance when all these things have been met.
Not without his signature, though. We can't.
The power of the as-built.
We
You
can't
have an
place that
as-built.
onus on our health agent having her take all that responsibility without him signing off on his own work. And
However, you are now condoning
no,
that work was completed, paid for, so I just want to know the grounds of someone that is licensed by you all in approving that he can
There'll
behave
be
in
no
this
decision
manner.
made tonight anyway, so.
No, we understand that.
But you understand the gravity of,
It's definitely
The
a change.
avenues, you're pursuing a legal avenue.
in the
In
other,
reference to-
in what?
Well, there's a dispute.
But it has
Yes.
nothing to do with this project.
Yeah, nothing to do with this
Absolutely nothing
project.
to do with this project.
So it's unrelated, I mean, the
Totally
fact that...
unrelated.
And how can someone try to bring their influence on something unrelated to the permit, the work,
Well, it
and the
is related,
completion?
because if you can show that there's damages to this particular property, and the court set and a court decides that there is damages, then.
There's no damages in this property.
Well, if you can't transfer the property, there's, you know,
Oh,
there'll be significant.
Significant damages.
And unfortunately,
And then the damage is done. How to bring it whole, I mean, you can't even collect, I wouldn't be able to collect the money from the installer because the money would be so substantial.
I mean, in essence, and I've been down this road before, I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years, and there's a clear-cut responsibility of the installer to, you can only imagine, you know, if for whatever totally unrelated issue, he decides not to sign off on work, which has been viewed and verified by the engineer of record as having been done correctly. So that's not an issue, you know.
Well, the engineer that did the as-built, was that the plan, was that the engineer that designed it as well?
Correct.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ed Stone, I mean, EAS Survey and Engineering. And, you know, it's just, and what I find to be, you know, particularly grading the situation is that he's in this position because he's obligated, from my perspective, to perform the job, part of which is, you know, to sign the certificate. There's one of two options. Either the work was done correctly or it wasn't. It's not a matter of whether or not he's been paid, but he has been paid. He does have the option at that particular point, if he had anything to do, anything to say with this matter on a financial sense, you know, that's fine. But, you know, on any particular whim, if someone decides to withhold the signature on the certificate, it's serious business, and it relates to his making use of the license in a way which is not anticipated by anybody. And I went through this years ago in Hamilton, and the town was shell-shocked and exercised, you know, and told the installer that he had 24 hours to come down and sign the certificate, or he's not going to be installing septic systems anymore. I mean, it's, you know, it's pretty ugly from my perspective.
It's definitely an unfair position. I definitely understand that.
And
Well, it sounds like it. We're only hearing one side of the story.
Well,
Sure.
that's true.
And that's what I would like, because it's very simple. You say, was the work done correctly? Did you do it? And were you paid? End of the story.
right, I mean, and
I mean,
that's
it's that simple, and
Kristen had a
you can
conversation.
certainly, well,
Kristen had a conversation with Ed Stone today. Ed Stone has done a fair amount of work, you know, from the Cape up, and he was dumbstruck, you know, as I was. I mean, and
Why didn't the engineer have it signed when it was done?
well, it should have been. I mean, in retrospect, we shouldn't have given him the final check, but we trusted him. I mean, you know, it's like saying to a builder, you're going to tell me that you're not going to produce a certificate of occupancy. Interestingly enough, on the CO concept, if I went to the building inspector and there was an issue regarding the certificate of occupancy, he doesn't have to hear from the builder of record to make the final inspection in order to issue the certificate of occupancy.
But he's going to want to check the electrical inspection.
Oh, sure, but if all the inspections have been done,
Okay.
and the builder, and I've seen builders pull this, decide not to call for the final CO, unless you have specific grounds not to do so, that's, you know, a typical override in a situation like this. I mean, and imagine, you know, my son doesn't like your son in school, I'm not going to sign the certificate of compliance. I mean, it's so utterly incredible, you know, and we don't want to go down this road, but the implications otherwise are significant, and not just for the installer, you know.
You can go down any road you'd like.
No, I understand that.
You know, I really appreciate that comment.
No, well, I've been in business for 35 years. I've done a lot of interesting work, and I've never sued nor been sued, you know, by anybody.
but I also, to be honest, I mean, I don't like the position I'm in right now,
No, I
okay?
appreciate
And
that, but
the fact of the matter is, this has been an abuse
I walk
of,
in
Well, sure, but we'll gladly come back and address it in public venue.
Absolutely.
Absolutely not a problem.
Because the matter has to be
That's
resolved.
what
I mean,
I'm
this is not
suggesting.
something that's going to go away.
We have to, and again, we can't vote on anything or take
Right.
any action tonight, but where does it stand now? Are you in contact with them every day? I mean,
No.
No, this is why there is.
when was the last time you just called them up and asked them, say, hey, this is what needs to happen?
Jen called him,
Yes,
With-
on the 17th of November.
with Kristen present.
Yes.
Eileen was there too.
Yeah.
Right, I called him last week, just like I call all of the other installers. You know, he was one of, I think, 4 last week that I called. And I asked him, actually reminded him, because I had left him a voicemail about it. Called and spoke to him and reminded him to come in and needed him to sign the certificate of compliance. And he said to me that he would not be signing the certificate of compliance. And I said, okay. I said, well, would you mind telling me why you don't plan on signing it? And he said, non-payment. And I said, okay, thank you very much. You know, I'll let the property owner know, and Kristen was in my office, so I relayed that very short message.
And I immediately had said, non-payment, what do you interpret that to mean? And it was for 147 Border Street. And I said, and that's when I then said, well, here are the payments.
Yeah, without him here, I really don't want to get.
Oh, sure,
Well,
no,
and
understood.
this is why I actually would like
think
that,
if we
because
had
it's
Oh,
very simple.
we'd love to see him here before the board.
If, maybe we can set that up, we can look into it and see what previous actions have been taken. It clearly, if the signature's needed, I mean, we can't sidestep that. It's pretty black and white on any permit. It doesn't matter where, or what. And we'll have to look at that, and maybe we can see if we can get you guys in with everybody to see if we can come to a resolution that way. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. I don't
Right.
know. But I think another night, and then it will be advertised on our agenda.
Oh, great.
So that way, at that point,
It's public
we,
record.
it's public record.
Oh, please, I mean, we
And-
appreciate
And someone
you.
else has a chance to speak to. I hate to hear a one-sided story.
Absolutely.
On anything, it doesn't matter.
I would also suggest that he give a letter prior to that. When we put it on the agenda, he gets a letter saying that.
And then we can further look
His
at it.
appearance is requested, and his ability to install systems in the town could be in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I really
and so
do,
do I.
because we're in a
No,
very, emotional,
We as a
I'm
board-
trying to sell a house and,
And whether we run into this when we have emergency sewer hookups and we're part of a purchase and sale, that the sale's contingent upon a hookup, and we as a board don't necessarily like to be in that position when we have a buyer and seller sitting in the room, and I know the board of selectmen don't like to be in that position. And I also don't think we have the jurisdiction to dispute, to decide on some contractual issues either, but.
Might be something we can act on, it might not.
contractual, yes, procedural, I would suggest that you do, but I'm not going to tell you your business, sir, certainly not. I don't mean to insult you, but,
We have an
on a procedural
idea.
issue.
I would invite you
Yes.
to come back in on a.
Wonderful.
Yes.
On
I
a
appreciate
planned
you
one.
taking the
I
time.
think we meet every 2 weeks,
So I think it's Monday, December 8th.
so we have to be on the
Okay, so if
agenda.
you could
So
put
it
us-
would be first up on the agenda since.
Thank
you're
you.
the-
It's gonna be
first
Thursday
up.
before that Monday, it has to be posted.
Yep, Thursday.
okay, so December 8th, I'll put it on the calendar and,
7 o'clock, safe
okay,
place.
all
You
right,
send those voters registered or not?
I can, yes.
That way,
yes.
that way, just,
Yeah.
it was sent, there's paperwork, there's a paper trail that says it was sent, so if by chance he doesn't show after the letter that he gets the gen drafts, then we can think about going to the next step.
Right.
Well, I appreciate Jen taking the time that she's taken to try to help us out. I mean, it's not a great way to
Yeah, it's,
do business.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Take
Very
care.
welcome.
Yes, sir.
Very
have
welcome.
a good night, have a nice holiday.
Good night.
Take care.
Okay, so yes, administrative invoice approvals, new business. What else do I see here? Adjournment?
So.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.